The ridge exploded, mud geysered skyward. Men screamed as mortar fire tore Blackthorn Ridge apart. Staff Sergeant Nolan Pierce's voice cracked raw over the chaos. "Any snipers here?" Silence. Just gunfire and dying. Then, movement in the corner of the trench. The quiet supply clerk. The girl nobody noticed. Mara Vale stood, rain streaming down her face, and pulled a custom anti-materiel rifle from her pack like she was drawing Excalibur from stone. One shot, half a mile. Enemy sniper dropped. 2 shots. Machine gun team vaporized. The battlefield didn't just change. It bent around her trigger finger. Who the hell was she? And why had she been hiding in logistics with a weapon that could kill gods? If you want to see how one silent woman dismantled an entire enemy battalion, stay until the very end. Like this story, comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale travels. Now let's go back to where it all began. The convoy rattled into forward operating base Granite like a funeral procession. 12 trucks, 43 personnel. Supplies enough to hold the ridge for 6 weeks if everything went according to plan. Nolan Pierce stood at the gates, arms crossed, rain hammering his shoulders, watching each vehicle roll through with the dead-eyed stare of a man who'd stopped believing in plans around his 3rd deployment. "Reinforcements?" Corporal Danny Reese asked beside him, hopeful as a kicked puppy. "Logistics," Nolan muttered. "Cooks, mechanics, paper pushers." "Better than nothing." "Barely." The last truck coughed to a stop. The back gate dropped. Soldiers climbed out, green, clean, terrified. Fresh meat for the grinder. Nolan scanned faces, cataloging weaknesses, calculating who'd break first when the mortars started falling. Then he saw her. Small frame. Oversized pack that looked like it weighed more than she did. Dark hair plastered to her skull by rain. Eyes down. Moving with the hunched, apologetic posture of someone who'd spent a lifetime trying not to be seen. She grabbed her duffel, slung that enormous pack, and walked past without a word. "Hey," Nolan called. "Name and assignment." She stopped, didn't turn. "Vale, Mara, supply distribution." "You always carry that much gear for inventory work?" "Yes, Sergeant." Flat, professional, empty. Like talking to a brick wall with vocal cords. "Barracks C, 2nd level. Don't wander after dark. Don't touch anything that's not yours. Don't—" "Understood." She walked away before he finished. Reese whistled low. "Friendly." "Broken," Nolan corrected. He'd seen that look before. Combat washouts, people who'd seen something that cracked them down the middle and never healed right. "She'll stay in her lane. Won't cause problems." He was wrong. FOB Granite wasn't a base. It was a scar on the mountainside. Concrete bunkers, razor wire, mud trenches that filled with freezing water every time the sky opened up. It sat on Blackthorn Ridge like a middle finger pointed at the valley below, daring the enemy to come take it. They'd tried twice. Failed twice. Command figured 3rd time's the charm, which was why they'd stuffed every available body into this godforsaken rock pile and told them to hold. Nolan ran Alpha Squad, 27 soldiers who'd survived long enough to stop asking stupid questions like, "When do we go home?" They knew the answer. You go home in a box or you go home when the war ends. Since the war wasn't ending, boxes it was. He found Mara that first afternoon in the supply depot, a concrete box that smelled like diesel and rust. She'd reorganized the entire ammunition cache, categorized by caliber, range, manufacturer, with little handwritten labels in perfect block letters. "Nobody asked you to do this," Nolan said. Mara didn't look up from her inventory clipboard. "It was inefficient. It worked. Barely." First hint of personality, sharp, precise, uncompromising. Nolan studied her closer. Mid-20s maybe, thin but not weak, moved with economy. No wasted motion. Hands steady. Something about the way she handled ammunition bothered him. Too familiar, too comfortable. Like she wasn't counting bullets, she was evaluating them. "Where'd you transfer from?" "Logistics Command, Fort Sterling." "Before that?" Pause. Micro-expression, tension around the eyes. "Various postings." Translation. "None of your business." Nolan let it slide. Everyone had ghosts. Long as hers didn't get his people killed, he didn't care. You're bunking with Vasquez and Chen. They're good people. Stay close to them when things get hot. Understood. She went back to her labels. Conversation over. Nolan left wondering why a supply clerk needed a pack that size, and why her hands moved over ammunition like a pianist touching keys. The mortar started just after dawn. Not a full assault, probing fire, testing defenses. 3 rounds walked up the eastern slope, close enough to shake the barracks and send soldiers scrambling for helmets and flak vests. Nolan was in the command bunker within 90 seconds, radio pressed to his ear. "Spotter teams, talk to me. Where's it coming from?" "Southwest tree line," came the crackling response. "Maybe 2 clicks. Can't get exact coordinates through this fog." "Then get me approximate and call for counter battery." "Artillery's still offline, waiting on parts." Of course it was. Nolan slammed the radio down and grabbed his rifle. If they couldn't shoot back, they'd sit here like targets until... The mortar stopped. Silence rolled over the ridge like a held breath. Soldiers looked at each other, confused, adrenaline dumping into systems with nowhere to go. Reese appeared at Nolan's elbow. "That's it? 3 rounds?" "Ranging fire," Nolan said. "They're measuring our response time." "So what do we do?" "We wait, and we dig deeper." He ordered rotations doubled, perimeter patrols expanded, and every fighting position reinforced. The engineers bitched. The infantry grumbled. Everyone did it anyway because Nolan had that particular brand of authority that came from keeping people alive longer than they had any right to be. Mara worked through it all without comment. While others reinforced bunkers, she cataloged medical supplies. While soldiers filled sandbags, she inventoried batteries, flares, communication gear, always moving, always quiet, always alone. Chen tried talking to her once. "So, Fort Sterling, huh? You work with the..." "Excuse me," Mara said, walking past like Chen was furniture. Chen looked at Vasquez. "Did I say something?" "She's shy." "She's weird," Vasquez shrugged. "Lot of weird people in logistics. Goes with the job." But it wasn't shyness. Nolan recognized the pattern. Mara wasn't avoiding people. She was avoiding being known. Every interaction minimized, every conversation truncated. She was hiding in plain sight, and whatever she was hiding from had teeth. Nolan found her on the western observation post at 0200 hours, staring into the valley through night vision binoculars. Alone. Off duty. No reason to be there except insomnia or paranoia. "Can't sleep?" he asked. Mara lowered the binoculars. "Wanted to see the approach vectors." "Your supply, not recon." "Habit." There it was again, that word. Habit. Nolan climbed up beside her, close enough to see what she was looking at. The valley sprawled below them, dark, formless, lethal. Good ambush country. Great killing ground. Terrible place to defend. "You've done this before," Nolan said. Not a question. Mara's jaw tightened. "I've worked lots of bases." "That's not what I mean." Silence. Long enough that Nolan thought she wouldn't answer. Then quiet as a confession. "I used to do something else." "What?" "Something I'm not good at anymore." She handed him the binoculars and walked away, leaving Nolan standing there with more questions than answers. He watched her disappear into the darkness, that massive pack still on her shoulders, and wondered what kind of weight she was really carrying. The attack came at dusk. Not probing fire this time, a full-scale assault. Mortars screamed out of the sky. Machine gun fire raked the trenches. Rockets slammed into bunkers with concussive force that made teeth rattle and ears bleed. The enemy had been preparing for days, moving into position while Granite's limited recon assets watched helplessly. Nolan was in the eastern trench when the first wave hit. 30, maybe 40 hostiles moving up the slope in coordinated fire teams, using smoke and terrain like they'd trained on this exact ridge. Professional, disciplined, deadly. "Contact east," someone screamed. Alpha Squad opened fire. Rifles cracked. Tracers cut the smoke. Men shouted coordinates, called for ammunition, dragged wounded back from exposed positions. The world compressed into noise and violence and the immediate calculus of survival. Nolan worked the line, shouting orders that barely cut through the chaos. "Conserve ammo! Controlled bursts! Don't let them flank left!" But they were flanking left. A heavy machine gun team had dug in on the southern ridge and was pouring fire into their weak point. Every time someone tried to reposition, that gun cut them down. 3 soldiers pinned, 4 more wounded, the line starting to buckle. "We need to suppress that gun," Reese yelled. "With what?" Nolan fired 3 shots, dropped behind cover as return fire chewed concrete above his head. "We don't have the angle. Call for artillery. Still offline." Another mortar round impacted 20 meters away. Shrapnel screamed through the air. Someone to Nolan's right went down hard, screaming, clutching a leg that wasn't there anymore. The smell of blood and cordite and burning metal filled the trench. This was it. The moment every defender dreaded. When the enemy found your weakness and pushed until something broke. Nolan could see it happening, the line bending, soldiers falling back, panic spreading like wildfire. Minutes from collapse. Maybe seconds. He made the call. "Any snipers here?" The words ripped out of his throat, raw and desperate. Nobody answered. Why would they? They didn't have snipers. Snipers were specialists, assets, precious commodities assigned to units that mattered. Granite got cooks and mechanics and supply clerks and movement. In the corner of the trench, where darkness pooled thick and absolute, someone stood. Mara Vale. Rain cascaded down her face. Her expression was empty, calm, like the battle around her was happening to someone else in another world. While everyone else fired blind and panicked, Mara reached into that enormous pack, the one Nolan had wondered about, and pulled out a long, foam-lined rifle case. She opened it. Inside lay a weapon that made Nolan's brain stutter. Custom anti-materiel rifle, match-grade barrel, competition trigger assembly, high magnification scope that cost more than most cars. Not military issue. Not standard armament. Not something a supply clerk had any business owning, let alone carrying into a combat zone. Mara assembled it with practiced efficiency. Buttstock, barrel, magazine, scope. 15 seconds. No hesitation. No wasted movement, like she'd done it 10,000 times in the dark. Then she chambered a round. The click was barely audible under the gunfire, but Nolan heard it, felt it, recognized it for what it was. A promise. Mara moved to the firing step, settled the rifle against her shoulder, and peered through the scope. Her breathing slowed, deepened. Her body language shifted from human to machine, predator math happening behind her eyes. "Vale," Nolan started. She fired. The sound cracked across Blackthorn Ridge like the hand of God slapping concrete. Not the sharp bark of a standard rifle. This was deeper, heavier. A sound that announced itself and everything it touched would die. Half a mile away, in a tree line shrouded by smoke and failing light, an enemy sniper dropped from his hide, dead before he hit the ground. The soldiers around Nolan froze, confusion and hope warring on their faces. Mara cycled the bolt, breathed, adjusted elevation, fired again. The heavy machine gun team, the one pinning Alpha Squad, the one killing them by inches, vanished in a spray of blood and shredded sandbags. 2 men. Center mass. Through smoke and rain and degraded visibility. Perfect shot placement. Impossible accuracy. 3 shots, 3 kills. 11 seconds. The battlefield changed shape. Enemy suppression fire faltered. Soldiers who'd been advancing suddenly hesitated, looking for the threat they couldn't see. Officers shouted orders that went unheard. The momentum shifted. Not much, just a degree or two, but enough. Enough for Alpha Squad to breathe, to regroup, to remember they had a chance. Nolan stared at Mara. Everyone did. This quiet, broken, invisible girl who'd spent 4 days avoiding eye contact and organizing ammunition had just saved their lives with precision that bordered on supernatural. "What?" Reese's voice cracked. "What the hell?" Mara ignored him. She was already scanning for the next target, reading the battle like sheet music only she could hear. Her hands moved over the rifle with mechanical certainty. Shell casings clinked against wet concrete, brass catching firelight. Each ejection a punctuation mark on someone's death sentence. 4th shot. Enemy officer coordinating the assault went down mid-gesture. 5th shot. Mortar crew setting up for another barrage scattered as their tube exploded. 6th shot. Radio operator trying to call for reinforcements died with the handset pressed to his face. Nolan's tactical brain caught up with his shock. He keyed his radio. All squads, push forward. Enemies disorganized. Don't let them regroup. Alpha Squad surged out of the trenches, using Mara's suppression to reclaim lost ground. Soldiers who'd been pinned down minutes ago were now advancing, firing, taking back positions they'd thought were lost. The enemy's organized assault crumbled into chaos as every leader, every support weapon, every critical asset vanished under Mara's methodical execution. She fired 12 times in 90 seconds, 12 shots, 11 kills. One miss. A round that skipped off a rock and still managed to wound 2 soldiers with ricocheting fragments. Then the rifle clicked empty. Mara dropped the magazine, reloaded smoothly, and settled back into position like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just altered the course of the battle through pure skill and violence. Rain ran down the scope. Steam rose from the barrel. She breathed slowly, evenly, waiting for the next target. Nolan climbed up beside her, crouching low. Vale. Vale. She didn't respond, didn't blink, eyes locked on the valley, scanning sectors with robotic precision. Mara. That got through. She glanced at him, and for just a second, Nolan saw something flicker behind the machine-calm exterior. Pain, deep and old and unhealed. Then it was gone, buried under layers of professional distance. Who the hell are you? Nolan asked. Supply distribution, Mara said flatly. Bullshit. Supply clerks don't. Enemy fire kicked up dirt between them. Mara shifted, acquired the shooter in half a second, and put a round through his chest before Nolan could finish his sentence. The hostile tumbled backward off a rocky outcropping, weapon clattering away. I used to do something else, Mara said quietly. I don't anymore. Clearly you do. I stopped, for a reason. What reason? She didn't answer. Just reloaded again and went back to scanning, shutting him out as completely as if he didn't exist. Nolan wanted to push, to demand answers, but the battle was still raging and soldiers were still dying. Questions could wait. Survival couldn't. Keep shooting, he said. Mara nodded once. Then she went back to work, and Nolan went back to the line, trying to process what he'd just witnessed. Word spread through granite faster than fire through dry grass. The supply clerk. The quiet girl. The one nobody noticed. She'd killed more enemy combatants in 2 minutes than entire squads had in weeks. Soldiers whispered in the trenches, in the barracks, over cold rations and rattling fear. Did you see that shot? Through smoke? Wind? Rain? I heard she dropped a guy at 800 meters. Who is she? Chen found Vasquez in the medical bunker helping patch up wounded. You bunk with her. Did you know? Know what? Vasquez pressed gauze against a shrapnel wound, applying pressure while a medic worked. That she's... I don't even know what to call it. A ghost? An assassin? She's logistics. Logistics don't shoot like that. Vasquez had no answer. None of them did. Mara was an equation that didn't balance, a story with missing chapters, and the more they thought about it, the more questions multiplied. Why was she in supply distribution? Why hide that level of skill? What happened to put someone with sniper-level marksmanship behind a clipboard instead of behind enemy lines? And most importantly, what would it take to make her stop hiding? They got their answer when the enemy came back with friends. The assault renewed at 2100 hours. Twice as many combatants, better coordinated, angrier. Someone on the enemy side had done the math and realized they'd lost critical personnel to a single shooter, and they were coming for blood. Mortars hammered the ridge, rockets turned bunkers into shrapnel storms. Heavy caliber fire chewed through sandbags and concrete and flesh. The enemy pushed from 3 sides simultaneously, forcing Granite's defenders to split their already thin numbers. Nolan was everywhere at once, directing fire, calling for ammo resupply, dragging wounded to cover. His radio crackled with desperate voices. North sector's collapsing! We need reinforcements on the west side. Where's that damn sniper? Mara was right where she'd been for 3 hours, in the eastern trench, methodically dismantling the enemy's command structure. Every shot precise, every target chosen for maximum tactical impact. Officers, radio operators, heavy weapons crews, anyone who could organize or coordinate or lead. But the enemy had adapted. Smoke canisters flooded the valley. Thermal camouflage blurred heat signatures. Drone teams appeared on the ridge lines, feeding targeting data to counter sniper units. Mara was being hunted, and the hunters were good. A bullet cracked past her head, so close it left a heat signature on her cheek. Mara dropped instantly, rolled right, came up in a new position, scanned for the shooter, found him. Enemy sniper, northeast ridge, partially concealed behind rocks. She fired, missed by inches as the hostile ducked. He fired back. Round impacted where she'd been a heartbeat earlier. This was different. This was a duel, professional versus professional, skill against skill. And Mara was pinned, unable to support the main line while trading shots with a ghost in the darkness. Nolan saw her dilemma. "Vale, fall back!" She ignored him, fired again, grazed the enemy sniper's cover, forcing him down. Bought herself 5 seconds, used them to kill a mortar crew setting up on her flank. Then back to the dueling shooter. The enemy was learning her patterns, predicting her movements, closing the probability window with every exchange. Sooner or later, he'd land a killing shot, and then the entire defensive line would collapse without her suppression fire. Mara knew this, accepted it, kept shooting anyway. Because stopping meant Alpha Squad died, meant the wounded in the medical bunker got overrun, meant everything Blackthorn Ridge represented, stubborn, desperate, impossible defense, crumbled into nothing. So she didn't stop. She built a false firing position instead. Mara worked fast, hands moving with clinical precision. Broken support poles, torn jacket, one spent shell casing placed just right to catch moonlight. She assembled a decoy firing position 30 meters from her actual location, angled to look like someone trying to hide behind inadequate cover. Then she repositioned, found a darker hole in the trench, and waited. The enemy sniper took the bait. His shot rang out, perfect placement, perfect timing, perfect execution. The decoy exploded in a shower of fabric and splintered wood. For half a second, the hostile exposed himself, leaning slightly to confirm the kill. Mara fired. The round caught him high center mass, punching through body armor and biology. He dropped without a sound, rifle clattering down the rocks. One threat neutralized, but there were more. 3 additional counter-snipers revealed themselves in that moment, all firing at her last confirmed position. Mara tracked them with mechanical calm. Lead target. Northeast, 700 meters, elevated position. Second target, east-southeast, 520, prone behind rubble. Third. The third one had already adjusted for her movement. His shot hit the sandbag 6 inches from her head. Mara rolled left, came up firing. Her round clipped his shoulder, spinning him sideways but not killing. He recovered, aimed. Mara fired again. Center, mass. He went down and didn't get up. She pivoted to the second sniper. He was repositioning, trying to flank. She led his movement, calculated wind drift, squeezed the trigger. The shot flew true. Another kill. The fourth one, the northeast shooter, had her zeroed. She saw the muzzle flash, dove right, felt the bullet pass so close it snagged her sleeve. No time to aim properly. She fired from instinct, from muscle memory, from 10,000 hours of training that lived deeper than conscious thought. The hostile dropped. 4 enemy snipers. 4 kills. 90 seconds. The trench around her looked like a war zone within a war zone. Shredded sandbags, spent casings, blood spatter on concrete. Mara reloaded mechanically, hand steady, heartbeat slow, and went back to supporting the main line like nothing extraordinary had happened. Because for her, it hadn't. This was just Tuesday. This was what she'd been trained to do, what she'd run from, what she'd buried under paperwork and silence and the desperate hope that maybe, if she stayed quiet enough, the ghosts would stop screaming. They hadn't. They never would. Between shots, Nolan caught glimpses of the person behind the precision. Mara's hands shook when she reloaded. Not from fear, from something else. Something deeper. Her eyes held that 1,000-yard stare people got after seeing too much, surviving too much, carrying too much. During a brief lull, Nolan climbed into her position. "Talk to me." "Nothing to say." Mara kept scanning the valley. "You just killed 11 people in under an hour." 12. Jesus Christ, Vale. 13 if you count the one who bled out from the ricochet. Her voice was flat, clinical, like she was reporting inventory numbers instead of body counts. Nolan grabbed her shoulder, forced her to look at him. Up close, he saw cracks in the armor. Exhaustion, pain, grief so old it had calcified into bone. "What unit were you in?" he demanded. Mara's jaw tightened. "Classified." "I don't give a damn about classification. My people are dying. If you're carrying trauma from some Black Ops nightmare, I need to know if you're going to break when we need you most." "I won't break." "How do you know?" "Because I already did." The words came out quiet, broken, real. Years ago, she gestured at the rifle, the battlefield, herself. "This is what's left after breaking. This is just mechanical, habitual, numb." Nolan saw it then. The truth she'd been hiding. Mara wasn't a soldier playing at logistics. She was a weapon trying to be human and failing and hating herself for both. "What happened?" he asked softly. "I hesitated." Mara's voice cracked. "One shot. One moment. My mentor died because I wasn't fast enough." "So you ran?" "I disappeared, buried the rifle, took the quietest posting I could find, told myself I'd never shoot again." "Why?" She finally looked at him, eyes wet, haunted. "Because every time I pull this trigger, I remember I could have pulled it faster, could have saved him, could have been better. And the rage?" Her hands clenched. "The rage at myself is the only thing that keeps me accurate." Nolan understood. Trauma and skill twisted together so tight they couldn't be separated. Mara didn't shoot well despite her pain. She shot well because of it. Every kill was penance. Every perfect shot was punishment. She'd turned herself into a weapon aimed at her own guilt, and the enemy just happened to be in the blast radius. "You're keeping us alive," Nolan said. "For now." "That's all anyone can ask." Mara shook her head. "It's not enough. It's never—" The radio screamed. "Contact south! Armor incoming! Repeat, enemy armor and mechanized infantry!" Both of them froze. Armor. That changed everything. Light weapons couldn't stop armored vehicles. They'd roll right through the defensive line, and everyone on Blackthorn Ridge would die screaming. Mara looked at her rifle, back at the valley, at Nolan. The question unspoken but deafening. "What do we do now?" Nolan made the call. "How much ammunition do you have left?" 43 rounds. "Can you kill a carrier with that rifle?" "Depends on the carrier, angle, armor thickness, luck." "We're out of luck." Mara's expression hardened. "Then I'll make some." She repositioned to the southern trench, settling into a firing point with clear sight lines to the approach road. The armored carrier rumbled up the valley like a steel beast, flanked by infantry using it for cover. Behind them, more hostiles. Dozens. Maybe 100. This wasn't an assault anymore. This was extermination. Mara studied the carrier through her scope, looked for weak points, joints, viewports, anywhere 50 caliber rounds might penetrate and disable. She found one, the driver's viewport, reinforced but not immune. Small target, moving target. Through rain and smoke and degraded visibility. Impossible shot. She took it anyway. The round punched through the viewport and into the driver's skull. The carrier swerved violently, clipped a boulder, lurched sideways. Infantry scattered. The vehicle shuddered to a stop, disabled but not destroyed. Close enough. Mara shifted fire to the exposed infantry. 3 shots, 4 kills. The soldiers dove for cover, assault momentum broken. But more were coming, always more. The valley seemed to birth them from darkness, an endless wave of hostiles who didn't care about casualties, didn't care about losses, just kept pushing with mechanical inevitability. Nolan's radio was chaos. Every sector reporting contact, every squad calling for support, ammo running low, casualties mounting. The defense wasn't just failing, it was drowning. "We can't hold," someone screamed. "West bunker's gone. They're in the wire." Nolan made calculations faster than thought. They were done. Overrun. Surrounded. The only option left was retreat. Fall back to the central bunker, try to hold long enough for reinforcement or evacuation. It was surrender wearing a different mask, but it was the only move left. He grabbed the radio. "All squads, fall back to—" "No." Mara's voice cut through the noise. Quiet. Absolute. Nolan turned. "What?" "Don't pull back." She was staring at the valley, at the ruined observation tower at the ridge's highest point. I have a better idea. There are no better ideas. We're outgunned, outmanned. I can stop them. One shooter can't. I can. Mara finally looked at him, and Nolan saw something new in her eyes. Not hope, not courage, acceptance. From the tower, full sight lines, clear fields of fire. I can disrupt their advance long enough for Alpha Squad to escape through the eastern ravine. Nolan's blood went cold. That tower's structurally compromised. It won't survive sustained fire. I know. They'll concentrate everything on that position. I know. You'll beat... Nolan couldn't finish, didn't need to. They both knew. It was a death post, a last stand, a place to die so others could live. Mara stood, slinging the rifle across her back. Move your people the moment I start firing. Don't wait. Don't come back for me. Vale? This is what I'm good at, Sergeant. Her voice carried that same flat calm, but underneath it, something else. Relief. Like she'd been waiting for this moment since her mentor died. Like the rifle had always been leading her here, to this tower, this sacrifice, this final shot. Let me do it right this time. Nolan wanted to argue, to find another way, to save the girl who'd saved them all. But soldiers were dying. The line was collapsing, and Mara was already moving, already running toward the tower, already gone. He watched her sprint across open ground under heavy fire, watched her climb the broken structure with mechanical efficiency, watched her settle into position at the top, rifle braced, scope scanning, and knew he was watching someone choose how they'd die. The last thing Nolan saw before turning to organize the retreat was Mara chambering around. Then the tower lit up with muzzle flash, and the final stand began. The first shot from the tower cracked across Blackthorn Ridge like thunder announcing Judgment Day. An enemy officer's head snapped back. Blood misted the air. Before his body hit the ground, Mara had already acquired her next target, a squad leader rallying troops for a final push. He died mid-gesture, arms still raised, orders dying on his lips. 2 shots. 2 kills. 3 seconds. The enemy hesitated. Confusion rippled through their ranks. Where was the fire coming from? Who was shooting? How could anyone be that accurate in this chaos? Then they saw her. Silhouette in the ruined tower. Alone. Exposed. One woman against an army. Every hostile gun turned toward that tower. Mara didn't stop shooting. Couldn't stop. This was the only language she spoke fluently anymore. The grammar of violence, the syntax of death, the poetry written in powder burns and brass casings. She read the battlefield like scripture and delivered judgment one trigger press at a time. Behind her, Nolan screamed orders. Move! 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 Alpha Squad! Eastern Ravine, now! Soldiers ran, grabbed wounded, abandoned positions they'd bled to hold. The retreat was chaotic, desperate, barely organized, but it was moving. They had a chance, because of her. In the tower, Mara cycled through targets with mechanical precision. Radio operators, vehicle gunners, anyone coordinating the assault. Every shot bought seconds. Every kill delayed pursuit. The concrete beneath her feet shuddered under incoming fire. Chunks of stone exploded into shrapnel. The entire structure groaned like a dying animal. She kept shooting. Rifle kicked against her shoulder, brass ejected, magazine empty, reload, acquire, fire. The world compressed into rhythm, into muscle memory, into the only truth she trusted, that pain could be precise, that guilt could be useful, that maybe, if she died doing this, it would mean something. The tower's support beams cracked, metal screamed. Mara fired 3 more times as the floor tilted beneath her. 3 more kills. 3 more seconds for Alpha Squad. Then the eastern wall collapsed. She rode the structure down, still shooting, still hunting targets, still fighting as concrete and steel and sky tumbled together into chaos. Her last thought before impact was clean and sharp, and almost peaceful. This time I was fast enough. Then darkness. And in the valley below, in the smoke and fire and screaming, one question echoed through every survivor's mind. Did she make it? The tower hit the ground like a collapsing cathedral. Steel screamed. Concrete shattered into dust and shrapnel. The impact sent a shockwave through Blackthorn Ridge that every soldier felt in their bones. A seismic punctuation mark on Mara Vale's final stand. Nolan didn't stop running. Couldn't. Alpha Squad was halfway through the eastern ravine, moving fast and low while enemy fire chased them through the darkness. But his eyes kept pulling back toward that column of dust and debris where the tower used to be, where Mara had been. "Keep moving," he shouted, forcing discipline over emotion. "Don't slow down!" Reese stumbled beside him, breath ragged. "Sarge, we can't just leave her." She knew what she was doing. "She's dead." The words hit harder than they should have. Nolan had lost soldiers before, good ones, friends. But something about Mara's sacrifice felt different, raw, like watching someone choose drowning because they were too tired to swim. Behind them, the enemy assault faltered. Mara's barrage from the tower had decapitated their command structure so thoroughly that what remained was just confused infantry with no coordination, no leadership, no tactical vision. Soldiers milled around, waiting for orders from officers who were cooling meat on the valley floor. It bought Alpha Squad the miracle they needed. Distance, time, survival. The ravine swallowed them whole, a natural trench carved by ancient water, deep enough to shield them from direct fire. Nolan counted heads as they moved. 27 in, 23 out. 4 lost during the retreat. 4 names he'd write in his report. 4 families who'd get folded flags and rehearsed condolences. 25 if you counted Mara. "Rally point Echo," Nolan ordered. 2 clicks south. We regroup there and... The radio crackled. Command's voice cut through static like a lifeline. "Granite Actual, this is Overwatch. Relief force inbound. ETA 12 minutes. Hostile forces are breaking contact." Breaking contact. Military speak for running away. The enemy had lost too many leaders, too much momentum, too much blood. They were retreating, melting back into the valley like smoke dispersing. Blackthorn Ridge was holding. Barely. Bloodied and broken, but holding. Because one woman with a rifle had decided holding mattered more than breathing. Nolan stopped the column, turned back toward the ridge. Smoke rose from a dozen fires. Bodies littered the slopes. The observation tower was just rubble now, a grave marker for the girl who'd saved them all. "Sarge?" Vasquez appeared at his elbow. "Orders?" Nolan made a decision that violated every protocol, every survival instinct, every rational thought. "Take them to Echo. Get medical attention. Coordinate with relief forces." "What about you?" "I'm going back." "That's suicide. The ridge is still hot." "I'm going back." Nolan's voice carried the tone that ended arguments. "If there's even a chance she's alive, I'm not leaving her in that rubble." Reese stepped forward. "I'll go with you." "Me too," Chen said. Others volunteered. Nolan cut them off. "No, I need you keeping the wounded alive. This is my call, my responsibility." He didn't wait for protests, just turned and started back up the ravine, rifle ready, every sense screaming that this was tactically insane. The enemy might still have snipers in the tree line. Mortars could range in any second. Relief forces were coming, but 12 minutes was a lifetime in combat. But Mara had gone into that tower alone. The least he could do was check her grave alone. The climb back to the ridge felt twice as long. Nolan moved carefully, using terrain for cover, watching for movement. The battle had shifted. No more sustained fire, just sporadic shots as the enemy disengaged. Wounded screamed in the darkness. Equipment burned. The air smelled like cordite and copper and failure. He reached the tower ruins just as dawn started bleeding into the eastern sky. Pale light touched the devastation, revealing the scope of destruction. The entire structure had pancaked down on itself, 3 floors compressed into one nightmarish sandwich of twisted metal and pulverized concrete. Nobody survived this. Nobody could survive this. Nolan climbed over the debris anyway, searching for what? A body? Closure? Proof that heroism and stupidity were the same thing wearing different masks? He found her rifle first. The barrel was bent, scope shattered, stock cracked. It lay half buried under concrete like Excalibur returned to stone. Nolan pulled it free, and something about holding the weapon made Mara real in a way she'd never been when she was alive. This rifle had killed dozens, had saved hundreds, had been the only language its owner spoke fluently. Now it was just scrap metal. Nolan kept searching, moved chunks of concrete, called her name. Got nothing back but silence and the distant sound of relief forces approaching. He was about to give up when he saw it. Fabric, dark green, moving slightly in the wind. He tore into the rubble with bare hands, adrenaline overriding exhaustion, pulled away rebar, shoved aside broken steel beams, found more fabric, then skin, pale, cold, covered in dust and blood. Maravale lay pinned beneath a support beam, unconscious, broken, but breathing. "Medic!" Nolan screamed into his radio. "I need a medic on the tower! Ruins now!" He checked her pulse. Weak but steady. Checked for bleeds, found plenty. Lacerations across her face, arms, torso. Her right leg was pinned at an angle that made his stomach turn. Possible internal injuries, definite concussion. She should be dead 10 times over, but she wasn't. Mara's eyes fluttered, opened, focused on Nolan with difficulty. Her lips moved, forming words too quiet to hear. He leaned close. "Don't talk. Medic's coming."
Did they... Her voice was shredded gravel. Did Alpha... 23 made it out, because of you. Something flickered in her eyes. Not relief, not pride, just exhaustion so profound it looked like surrender. She'd done the math, 4 dead, but 23 alive, the equation balanced in blood and breathing bodies. "Worth it," she whispered. Then her eyes closed, and Nolan couldn't tell if she'd passed out or simply stopped fighting. The medic arrived 90 seconds later, a combat corpsman named Hayes, who'd kept more soldiers alive than protocol said was possible. He assessed Mara with clinical speed, barking orders to the squad that had followed him up. Collapsed lung, fractured femur, probable spinal trauma. "We need to stabilize her here before we move." "How long?" Nolan demanded. 5 minutes if we're lucky." "You've got 3. Enemy could counterattack any..." An explosion cut him off. Not close, but close enough. The relief force had engaged enemy stragglers on the western approach. Gunfire echoed across the valley. The battle wasn't over. Just paused. Hayes worked with brutal efficiency. IV line, pressure bandages, neck brace. He and his team built a makeshift stretcher from debris and secured Mara to it with practiced hands. She didn't wake, didn't move. Just lay there like a broken doll while strangers tried to glue the pieces back together. They carried her down the ridge as the sun crested the horizon, painting Blackthorn in shades of gold and crimson. Below, relief forces were pushing the enemy back, reclaiming ground, turning defeat into something that might charitably be called victory if you squinted and didn't count the bodies. Nolan walked beside Mara's stretcher, still carrying her destroyed rifle, and wondered what kind of person calculated their life's worth in enemy kills and ally survival rates. What kind of math turned a human being into a precision instrument aimed at their own guilt? What kind of war created soldiers who could only speak in muzzle flash and death? The evacuation helicopter touched down 30 minutes later, a thunderous angel that whipped dust and debris into blinding clouds. They loaded Mara first, strapping her stretcher to the deck while Hayes continued working, checking vitals, adjusting IVs, fighting death with gauze and determination. Nolan climbed in beside her. Reese tried to follow. "Stay with the squad," Nolan ordered. "Make sure everyone gets accounted for. Sarge, you need..." "That's an order, Corporal." Reese backed off. The helicopter lifted, and Blackthorn Ridge fell away beneath them, a smoking scar on the landscape that had cost too much and meant too little. Nolan watched it shrink into the distance and wondered if Mara would have preferred dying up there, rifle in hand, purpose clear and absolute. Probably. But she didn't get that choice. Not anymore. The field hospital at Camp Sterling was organized chaos, a temporary city of tents and prefab structures where surgeons performed miracles with insufficient equipment and too many patients. They took Mara straight to surgery. 6 hours. Hayes emerged exhausted, blood on his scrubs, carrying the weight of someone who'd just fought biology to a draw. "She'll live," he said. Nolan felt something unlock in his chest. Prognosis? Femurs pinned, lungs reinflated. Spinal trauma was less severe than we thought. Bruising, not severance. She'll walk again, probably run, definitely fight if she's stupid enough to try. When can I talk to her? 48 hours minimum. She needs rest, fluids, and about 3 weeks without anyone shooting at her. Nolan nodded, started to leave, stopped. "Hayes, thank you." The medic shrugged. I just stitched her together. She did the hard part by not dying. That sounded right. Mara Vale, too stubborn to die, too broken to live, existing in some gray space between heroism and self-destruction. Nolan had known soldiers like that before. Most ended up in graves or psych wards. A few ended up as legends. He wasn't sure which category Mara fit. He found out 3 days later when she woke up, screaming. The nurses called Nolan at 0300 hours. Your sniper's awake, and she's trying to leave. He arrived to find Mara in a hospital gown, IV pole clutched like a weapon, standing in the hallway despite the fact that her right leg was more metal than bone at this point. 2 nurses blocked her path, trying to talk her down with calm voices that weren't working. Ma'am, you need to get back in bed. I need my rifle, Mara said, voice hoarse, eyes wild. Where's my rifle? You don't have... Where is my rifle? Nolan stepped forward. Vale, stand down. She turned, and he saw combat dissociation written all over her face. Mara wasn't in the hospital. Mentally, she was still in that tower, still firing, still fighting, caught in a loop her brain couldn't escape. Sergeant? Recognition flickered. Where's Alpha Squad? Are they... Safe. 23 made it out. I need to get back. They'll need covering fire. The battle's over. It's never over. That landed like artillery. Mara swayed and Nolan caught her before she collapsed. The nurses helped him guide her back to bed. She fought weakly, then gave up, staring at the ceiling with eyes that had seen too much and processed too little. What day is it? She asked quietly. Friday. You've been out for 3 days. The ridge? Holding. Reinforcements arrived. Enemy pulled back after losing their command structure. Casualties? Nolan hesitated. 14 dead total, 31 wounded. Could have been everyone if you hadn't... 14. Mara closed her eyes. Doing math again. 14 dead. 23 saved. Plus the wounded. Carry the 1. Divide by guilt. Multiply by trauma. Equation never balanced. You did everything right, Nolan said. I survived. That's not right. That's lucky. Luck's for people who deserve it. The nurses left them alone. Nolan pulled up a chair, suddenly aware that he was having a conversation he wasn't trained for. Tactical decisions, he understood. Logistics, fire support, troop movements, that was his language. But this? Talking someone out of survivor's guilt while they recovered from wounds earned saving his life. He was drowning. What happened to your mentor? He asked. Sometimes the only way through was straight ahead. Mara's jaw tightened. Marcus Hale, best shooter I ever met. Better than me. Faster. Smarter. He taught me everything. Wind reading, breathing control, target prioritization. Her voice went flat. Taught me how to kill without feeling, without hesitating. What happened? Ambush, 3 years ago. We were extracting a target from hostile territory. Things went wrong. They always do. Marcus took a defensive position to buy time for the team to get out. She paused, swallowed. There was a hostile sniper, hidden. Marcus didn't see him. I did. Nolan waited. I had the shot. Clear line, easy angle. But I hesitated. Half a second. Thought about... I don't even remember what I thought about. Some stupid procedural question, whether I should call it in first or just fire. Mara's hands clenched into fists. In that half second, the hostile shot Marcus, center mass, killed him instantly. That's not your fault. I had the shot. You were following protocol. Protocol doesn't matter when people die. The words exploded out of her, raw and jagged. Machines beeped faster, heart rate spiking. I could have saved him. Should have saved him. But I thought instead of acting, and he paid for it. Nolan let the silence settle. Let Mara's breathing slow. When he spoke, his voice was careful. So you buried yourself in logistics, hid from the rifle, hoped the guilt would fade if you stopped shooting. It didn't. And now? Now I remember why I stopped. Mara looked at her hands. Every time I pull that trigger, I feel him dying, feel that half second stretching out forever. And the only way to make it stop is to shoot faster. Shoot better. Shoot until the rage burns clean and I can pretend I've paid enough. Rage at yourself. at the part of me that hesitates, that thinks, that second guesses. The part that's human. Mara's laugh was bitter. Humans make mistakes. Weapons don't. I'm better as a weapon. Weapons don't save 23 people. They do if you aim them right. Nolan wanted to argue, to explain that she was more than a rifle with a heartbeat, that trauma and skill weren't the same as purpose, that turning yourself into a guided missile aimed at guilt was slow-motion suicide wearing camouflage. But he'd seen her in that tower, seen the calm acceptance on her face when she understood the cost, seen her run toward death like it was liberation. Some conversations couldn't be won with words. "What happens now?" he asked instead. "I discharge. Go back to logistics. Disappear again. And if I don't let you?" Mara finally looked at him. "You can't stop me. Watch me." Nolan leaned forward. "You know how many soldiers would kill for your skill set? How many lives you could save if you stopped running?" "I'm not a soldier anymore." "You never stopped. You just pretended." "Pretending kept me sane." "Did it?" Nolan gestured at her, at the hospital bed, the wounds, the haunted eyes. "Because from where I'm sitting, you look like someone who's been dying by inches since your mentor took that bullet. You buried yourself alive and called it safety. Better than burying other people. You saved 23 after killing dozens. Enemy combatants who were trying to kill us. Still people. So are the ones breathing because you shot first." The argument circled like water down a drain, inevitable, destructive, going nowhere useful. Mara closed her eyes. Nolan recognized the gesture. Conversation over. Walls up. Retreat into the fortress of silence and self-loathing. He stood. "Physical therapy starts in 2 weeks. Rebuilding that leg's going to hurt." "Good." "Vale. I'm tired, Sergeant. Please leave." Nolan left, but he didn't stop thinking about her, about the broken girl with the rifle who decided her life mattered less than the equation of survival, about the way she'd accepted death like an old friend, about what happened to soldiers who stopped fighting the enemy and started fighting themselves. Recovery was brutal. Mara approached physical therapy the same way she approached marksmanship: mechanical, precise, relentless. Push until something breaks, then push harder. The therapist tried to slow her down. She ignored them. Weeks compressed into days. Pain became fuel. Weakness became target practice. 6 weeks after the tower collapsed, Mara walked without a cane. 8 weeks, she ran. 10 weeks, she appeared on the rifle range at 0500 hours with a borrowed weapon and put 30 rounds through the same hole at 300 meters. Word spread. The supply clerk who became a legend. The ghost who'd saved Blackthorn Ridge. Soldiers wanted to meet her. Officers wanted to recruit her. Everyone wanted a piece of the quiet girl who turned invisible trauma into visible miracles. Mara hated it. She stayed in logistics, reorganized inventories, counted ammunition, avoided eye contact, tried to disappear back into the background like none of it had happened, like she could unfire those shots, unsave those lives, unbecome the weapon she'd sworn never to be again. It didn't work, because Nolan kept showing up. "There's a training program," he said one morning, cornering her in the supply depot. "Advanced marksmanship, teaching new shooters the fundamentals." "Not interested." "You'd be perfect for it." "I'm logistics." "You're wasted in logistics." Mara turned on him, eyes blazing. "I'm safe in logistics. Nobody dies when I'm counting bullets instead of firing them. Nobody lives either. Better than the alternative." "Is it?" Nolan stepped closer. "Because from where I stand, you're just waiting for the next Blackthorn Ridge. Next time someone screams for a sniper. Next time you have to choose between hiding and saving lives. And maybe next time, there won't be a tower. Won't be a miracle. Won't be someone stupid enough to dig you out of the rubble. Then I'll die doing what I'm good at. Or you could live doing what you're good at. Teach others. Pass on what Marcus taught you. Turn trauma into something that builds instead of destroys." "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Nolan's voice went hard. "You think dying in that tower would have been penance,
would have balanced the books. But you survived, and now you don't know how to live with yourself. So you're back here, counting ammunition, waiting for permission to stop breathing. Mara's hands shook. That's not... It's exactly that. And it's wasting the gift Marcus gave you. He didn't give me anything. I let him die. He gave you training, skill, knowledge, a legacy that could save hundreds if you stopped using it to punish yourself. Nolan softened. You think he'd want this? You hiding in a depot, slowly suffocating under guilt? Or would he want you teaching others to shoot faster, think clearer, survive better? The question landed like a kill shot. Mara stood there, trembling, armor cracking, all the pain she'd been compressing into smaller and smaller spaces suddenly finding cracks to leak through. I can't, she whispered. You already did. It hurts. Everything worth doing hurts. Mara looked at her hands, at the scars from the tower collapse, at the calluses from 10,000 trigger pulls, at the evidence of violence written into her skin like a language she couldn't unlearn. If I teach them, she said slowly, and they die anyway, then they die better trained, better prepared, with a chance they wouldn't have otherwise. Nolan pulled out a folder. Training program starts in 3 weeks, class of 15, most of them green, some with potential, all of them needing someone who understands that marksmanship isn't just mechanics, it's mindset. He placed the folder on the supply crate between them. Mara stared at it like it was a loaded weapon, which, in a way, it was. I'm not a teacher, she said. You're whatever you decide to be. Question is whether you're brave enough to decide. Nolan left the folder and walked away, leaving Mara alone with the hardest choice she'd faced since pulling that trigger on Marcus's killer 3 years too late. She opened the folder at midnight, read the names, looked at the photos, young faces, hopeful eyes, the kind of raw optimism that combat beat out of you within weeks. 15 soldiers who wanted to learn long-range shooting, who thought marksmanship was about steady hands and good optics, who had no idea it was about choosing who lives and who dies from 1,000 meters away, about carrying those choices in your bones, about the way hesitation measured in milliseconds could cascade into body counts and folded flags. Mara closed the folder, went to her bunk, stared at the ceiling until dawn painted the windows gray, made a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff without checking for water below. She reported to the training facility at 0600 hours. The rangemaster looked surprised. Can I help you? Mara Vale? I'm here for the advanced marksmanship program. Are you a student or instructor? If you'll have me. The rangemaster's eyes widened. You're from Blackthorn? Yes. He grabbed a radio, started making calls. 10 minutes later, Mara was standing in front of a training classroom, facing 15 soldiers who looked at her like she was a ghost made flesh. They'd heard the stories, seen the casualty reports, knew what she'd done from a collapsing tower with 43 rounds and an iron will. They expected a warrior, a hero, someone who'd march in and turn them into killing machines through discipline and hard training. What they got was a thin woman with scars on her hands and shadows in her eyes who spoke so quietly they had to lean forward to hear. My name is Mara Vale, she said. I'm going to teach you how to shoot, but first, I'm going to teach you why shooting is the last thing you should want to do. Confused looks. A few exchanged glances. Anyone here killed someone? Mara asked. Silence. Good. I have, more than I remember, more than I've counted, and every single one lives here. She tapped her chest. Whether I want them to or not, whether I was right or wrong or simply faster, they're permanent, irrevocable, and if you think killing is what makes you a good marksman, you're already lost. A hand raised. Young soldier, eager, stupid. But you saved Alpha Squad. I traded lives. Enemy lives for allied lives. That's not saving. That's accounting. And the math never balances. Not really. Another hand. Then why teach us? Because if you're going to kill, Mara said quietly, you should do it with precision, with understanding, with the full weight of what you're ending. Not because it's easy, because it's necessary. And the difference between those two things is everything. The room went silent. These soldiers had expected tactics and techniques. They got philosophies soaked in trauma. Some looked disappointed. Others looked terrified. A few looked like they finally understood what they were signing up for. Tomorrow we start with the rifle, Mara continued. Mechanics, breathing, sight picture, the technical foundation. But today, I want you to understand something critical. She pulled out a photograph. Marcus Hale, smiling, alive, before. This was my instructor, best shooter I ever knew. He taught me everything, except how to shoot fast enough to save his life when it mattered. Mara's voice stayed level, professional, but her hands shook slightly, holding the photo. He died because I hesitated. Half a second. That's all it takes to turn good training into a body bag. So shoot faster? Someone asked. So shoot smarter. Mara put the photo away. Speed without judgment is murder. Judgment without speed is suicide. You need both. And learning both means understanding that every shot you take echoes forever. She dismissed them. They left quietly, unsettled, no longer sure if they wanted this training or just wanted to run. Mara watched them go and wondered if she was helping or damaging, teaching or trauma dumping, creating better soldiers, or simply spreading her infection. The range master approached. Interesting first lesson. Too much? Too honest, maybe. They're used to instructors who glorify combat. Combat's not glorious, it's necessary. Sometimes. If we're lucky. Mara shouldered her bag. I won't lie to them about that. Fair enough. Tomorrow, practical exercises? Tomorrow, I teach them how not to become me. She walked away before he could ask what that meant. But she knew. It meant teaching these soldiers that skill without conscience was just efficiency in service of nothing. That marksmanship was a tool, not an identity. That the rifle answered questions. It didn't ask them. And most importantly, that hesitation wasn't weakness. It was humanity. And humanity was the only thing keeping them from becoming weapons that forgot how to be people. The training program lasted 12 weeks. Mara taught mechanics first. Breath control, trigger discipline, sight alignment. The technical foundation that turned amateurs into marksmen. Then she taught the harder lessons. When to shoot, when to wait, how to read a battlefield beyond simple target acquisition, how to prioritize lives under pressure, how to carry the weight afterward. 3 students washed out, couldn't handle the psychological burden. Mara didn't judge them. If anything, she envied their self-awareness. The remaining 12 graduated with honors. Their final exam was a scenario, simulated combat, multiple targets, civilians mixed with hostiles, split-second decisions that would haunt them if they chose wrong. Every single one chose correctly. Slow when they needed to be. Fast when it mattered, precise when lives hung in the balance. Mara watched from the observation deck and felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Not pride exactly, not redemption, but something close. Something that tasted like purpose without punishment. After the ceremony, one of the graduates approached her. Instructor Vale, thank you. For what? For not teaching us to be like you. Mara blinked. What? You taught us to be better, smarter, more careful. The soldier smiled. You taught us that being a good shooter means knowing when not to shoot. That's not in any manual. He saluted and walked away, leaving Mara standing there with the closest thing to peace she'd felt in 3 years. It wasn't much, just a crack in the armor. But cracks let light through, and light, however small, mattered. Nolan found her later, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Heard your class did well. They'll do better in the field. Because of you. Because of what I taught them not to be. Same thing. Mara considered that. Maybe. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the day die. Finally, Nolan spoke. There's another class starting in 6 weeks. Command wants you to lead it. Are you asking or ordering? Asking, always asking. Mara thought about Marcus, about the tower, about 15 soldiers who'd carry her lessons into combat and maybe survive because of them, about the equation that never balanced but kept demanding recalculation. I'll do it, she said. On one condition. Name it. No more hiding, no more logistics. If I'm doing this, I'm doing it as an instructor, officially, permanently. Nolan smiled. Welcome back to the war, Vale. I never left. I just stopped admitting it. She turned to face him, and for the first time since the tower fell, Mara looked like someone who might survive herself. Not healed, not whole, but fighting. And fighting meant living. And living, however painful, was better than the alternative. Some people changed battles with one shot. Mara changed herself by teaching others why each shot mattered. It wasn't redemption, wasn't forgiveness, just forward motion, just the slow, difficult work of turning trauma into teaching and guilt into guidance. The rifle still spoke her language, but now she was learning to speak back, in full sentences, with context and conscience, and the understanding that weapons were tools, not identities. And sometimes that was enough. The silence after those words lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then Nolan's radio erupted. All instructors report to command immediately. Priority 1. No exceptions. Mara and Nolan exchanged glances. Priority 1 meant crisis. Meant something had broken at the command level that needed immediate attention. Mara's instinct was to fade back. Let the real soldiers handle real problems while she disappeared into the background. But she'd just promised no more hiding. You coming? Nolan asked. Mara grabbed her jacket. Yeah, I'm coming. They walked together through the base, past soldiers who'd heard the same call and were moving with that particular brand of controlled urgency that said nobody knew what was happening, but everyone suspected it was bad. The command building loomed ahead, concrete and steel, all sharp angles and no mercy. Inside, the briefing room was packed. Officers, squad leaders, senior NCOs. And against the back wall, 2 men in civilian clothes with the kind of faces that said intelligence community without needing badges. Mara's blood went cold. She knew those faces, knew that particular brand of bureaucratic predator. She'd worked for people like them once, before Marcus, before the tower, before she'd tried to bury that part of herself under logistics paperwork and silence. The base commander, Colonel Sarah Vance, a hard woman with harder eyes, called the room to order. Sit down, shut up, listen. Everyone sat. The civilians stepped forward. The taller one spoke first, voice flat and administrative. I'm Deputy Director Mitchell from Defense Intelligence. This is Agent Carver. We're here regarding an individual who was recently active during the Blackthorn Ridge engagement. Mara felt every eye in the room slide toward her. She kept her expression neutral, breathing steady. But her hands wanted to shake, so she locked them together under the table. Team. Mitchell continued. Specifically, we're here about Mara Vale, former member of Task Force Phantom, a classified sniper unit that officially doesn't exist. Miss Vale was discharged 3 years ago following a mission failure that resulted in the death of her team leader. The room went silent, not the comfortable kind, the kind that had teeth. Nolan spoke up. With respect, sir, Vale's service record shows logistics assignments going back. Her cover record shows logistics, Carver interrupted. Her actual record is sealed under 6 different classifications, and the fact that she's here, teaching marksmanship, using skills she acquired in a program she signed non-disclosure agreements about, that's a problem. Mara stood slowly. I haven't disclosed anything classified. You disclosed your skill set, publicly, during combat operations. I saved lives. You violated operational security. Mitchell's voice carried the weight of someone who'd sent better people to worse fates. Task Force Phantom's existence is predicated on total anonymity. No public records, no acknowledgement, no survivors going rogue and demonstrating capabilities that point back to the program. I'm not... Mara's voice cracked. She steadied it. I'm not part of that program anymore. Once Phantom, always Phantom. You know the protocols. Colonel Vance cut in. Gentlemen, if you're here to arrest one of my instructors, you'll need more than bureaucratic double talk. What exactly are you accusing her of? Mitchell pulled out a tablet. Displayed footage, grainy, taken from a distance, but unmistakable. Mara in the tower, firing, moving with the kind of precision that wasn't just training. That was something deeper. Genetic, maybe. Or surgical. Or classified. This footage has been circulating in intelligence circles, Mitchell said. Hostile agencies are very interested in who this shooter is, where she was trained, what other capabilities she might possess. Miss Vale has become a security liability simply by being exceptional. So what? Nolan's voice cut like a blade. You want her to what? Shoot worse? Hide better? Disappear because she's too good at her job? We want her to come back, Carver said quietly. Task Force Phantom is reforming. New mission parameters. Better support. Leadership that understands the psychological burden of the work. We need operators with Vale's skill set. Mara laughed. Couldn't help it. The sound was bitter and broken. You're recruiting me. That's what this is. We're offering you a way to use your talents in the proper context. I'm done with Phantom. You were never properly debriefed, never completed the discharge protocols. Technically, you went AWOL. Technically, you abandoned me. Mara's voice dropped to ice. After Marcus died, after I filed 17 requests for psychological support, after I made it clear I couldn't do the work anymore. You know what response I got? Paperwork reassigning me to logistics with a note saying, needs time to recalibrate. Mitchell's expression didn't change. The program was under review. Resources were limited. Resources? Mara stepped around the table. Soldiers shifted to give her space. You mean people? Operators who broke under the pressure and got filed under administrative losses instead of treated like human beings. Miss Vale, how many? Her voice cracked like a whip. How many Phantom operators are still active? How many discharged? How many dead by their own hands because the program that built them forgot to teach them how to be anything else? Silence. Cold and absolute. Carver spoke carefully. That's classified information. Which means the number's bad enough you won't say it out loud. Mara looked at the assembled officers, at Nolan, at the door she could walk through if she just stayed quiet and compliant. I'm not going back. You can threaten me with violations and protocols and whatever bureaucratic leverage you think you have, but I'm done being a weapon for people who don't care if I break. Mitchell's jaw tightened. You don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. I'm making mine. Then you're making it wrong. He gestured to Carver, who pulled out a second folder. Thicker. Older. We have documentation of protocols you violated during active service. Missions where you deviated from orders. Communications you failed to encrypt properly. Any one of these is grounds for court-martial. Mara went very still. You're blackmailing me. We're reminding you of consequences. Colonel Vance stood. That's enough. This is my base, gentlemen. And unless you have arrest warrants, you don't get to threaten my personnel. This is a matter of national security. Then bring me paperwork from the Joint Chiefs. Until then, Miss Vale is under my command, teaching soldiers who need her skills. And if you have a problem with that, you can take it up with my superiors. Mitchell and Carver exchanged glances, some silent calculation happening behind civilian masks. Finally, Mitchell nodded. We'll be in touch, Colonel. Miss Vale, consider this conversation a courtesy warning. Next time we bring lawyers and MPs. They left. The door closed. The room exhaled collectively. Vance turned to Mara. My office. Now. The colonel's office was sparse, functional, the kind of space occupied by someone who spent more time in the field than behind a desk. Vance gestured to a chair. Mara sat. Nolan followed, positioning himself by the door like a barrier between Mara and the world. Vance poured 3 glasses of whiskey, slid them across the desk. Drink. Ma'am, that wasn't a suggestion, Vale. Mara drank. The whiskey burned clean and sharp, reminded her she was alive, still breathing, still capable of feeling something other than guilt and numbness. Vance drank hers in one swallow. How much of what Mitchell said was true? Most of it. Task Force Phantom? Classified sniper program. Deep cover operations. Targets that conventional forces couldn't touch. We went places that didn't exist and killed people who were never born. Sounds like a nightmare. It was efficient. Vance studied her. And Marcus Hale? Mara's hands tightened around the glass. He was my team leader, mentor, the best operator Phantom ever produced. He died because I hesitated during an extraction, half a second too slow. That's the truth they won't put in reports. You blame yourself. I was the only sniper in position. I had the shot. I didn't take it fast enough. Why? The question landed different than Mara expected. Not accusatory, just curious. Like Vance actually wanted to understand instead of judge. Because, Mara's voice caught, because I thought about protocols, about rules of engagement, about whether the target was confirmed hostile or just someone in the wrong place. And while I thought, someone else shot Marcus. So you buried yourself in logistics. So I tried to become someone who didn't have to make those decisions anymore. Vance poured another round. Didn't work, did it? No, ma'am. Because Blackthorn Ridge needed a sniper, and you were the only one available. Yes, ma'am.
And now Phantom wants you back because you reminded them what you're capable of. Mara nodded, set down the glass.
I can't go back. I won't. That program breaks people, turns them into machines, and when the machines malfunction, they get filed away and forgotten. I've seen it happen to better operators than me. What do you want instead? The question surprised her. Nobody had asked that in 3 years. What did Mara Vale want? Not what the program needed, not what the mission demanded. Just, what did she want? I want to teach, Mara said quietly. I want to take the skills Phantom gave me and use them to keep soldiers alive instead of just making enemies dead. I want to matter in a way that doesn't require I stop being human. Vance considered this. Looked at Nolan. Sergeant Pierce, your assessment. Vale's the best marksmanship instructor I've seen, Nolan said without hesitation. Her students aren't just technically proficient, they're psychologically prepared. They understand the weight of what they're learning. That's rare. That's valuable. Even if it paints a target on this base, even if hostile intelligence is circling because of her? Even then, we can manage security threats. We can't manufacture that level of teaching quality. Vance drummed her fingers on the desk, making calculations, running scenarios. Finally, she leaned back. Here's what's going to happen. Vale, you're officially assigned to the Advanced Combat Training Division as a senior marksmanship instructor. Full rank restoration. I'm putting you in as a gunnery sergeant. That gives you authority to run programs, develop curriculum, and protect your students from bureaucratic interference. Mara blinked. Ma'am, you don't get a choice about this either. I need your skills. My soldiers need your skills. And if Phantom wants you back, the best defense is making you too valuable to pull. Mitchell and Carver can threaten all they want, but they can't touch you if you're producing results that make generals happy. And if they come back with warrants, then we fight, properly, with lawyers and media pressure and every political tool available. But first, we make you indispensable. Understood? Mara felt something unlock in her chest. Not relief, not exactly, but recognition. Someone was fighting for her instead of against her. Someone saw value beyond the body count. Understood, ma'am. Good. Dismissed, both of you. And Vale? Vance's expression softened fractionally. Welcome to the side of the war that builds instead of burns. The promotion ceremony was small, quiet. Just Vance, Nolan, and Mara in an empty classroom with stripped-down efficiency. Vance pinned the new rank insignia to Mara's collar, shook her hand, and left without ceremony. Nolan waited until they were alone. How do you feel? Terrified. Good. Means you're taking it seriously. Mara touched the insignia. Gunnery sergeant. A rank that came with authority, responsibility, the expectation that she'd lead instead of hide. What if I fail? You won't. You don't know that. I know you held a collapsing tower long enough to save 23 people. I know you taught 15 students to be better than you without crushing them under your trauma. I know you made a choice to step forward instead of backward. Nolan smiled slightly. That's not someone who fails. That's someone who fights. They walked back to the barracks together. Soldiers saluted Mara as they passed, some because of the new rank, others because they'd heard the stories and knew what those stripes represented. She returned each salute mechanically, still adjusting to visibility after years of invisibility. That night, Mara couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Mitchell's face, about the folder full of violations and threats, about how easy it would be for Phantom to destroy her if they decided she was more liability than asset. Around 0200 hours, she gave up on sleep and went to the range. The facility was empty, dark, just moonlight filtering through windows and the smell of gun oil and brass. Mara found her locker, the one they'd assigned her after the promotion. Inside was a new rifle, not the custom weapon she'd carried to Blackthorn. That was scrap. But a standard military precision rifle with quality optics and a note from Vance, use it well. Mara assembled the weapon with practiced hands, loaded a magazine, set up at the 1,000-meter range, and stared downfield at targets barely visible in the darkness. She fired once. The shot echoed through empty space. Downrange, a target pinged. Center mass, perfect placement despite low light and cold barrel. Couldn't sleep either? Mara turned. A woman stood in the doorway. Late 30s, athletic build, scar running down her left cheek. She wore civilian clothes but moved with military precision. "Range is closed," Mara said. "I know. I'm not here for the range." The woman stepped closer. "Name's Elena Santos. I was Phantom, 4th generation. Got out 2 years ago after enough." Mara's grip tightened on the rifle. "How did you find me?" "Same way Mitchell found you. Phantom keeps tabs on former operators. Some of us just use that information differently." Elena leaned against a support beam. "I heard you told them to go to hell." "More or less." "Good. Someone needed to." "You here to recruit me for something else?" Elena laughed, bitter sound. "No, I'm here to warn you. Mitchell's playing a long game. The threats today? That was just opening moves. He's going to pressure you systematically, make your life difficult, undermine your authority, create situations where joining Phantom looks like the only option." "Why?" "Because the program's dying. They're losing operators faster than they can train new ones. Too much psychological damage, too many suicides, too much institutional rot. You walking away and thriving, that's dangerous. That proves Phantom's not inevitable, that there's life after the program." Mara processed this. "So what do I do?" "Keep teaching, keep building, keep proving that skills can exist without the program's poison." Elena pulled out a card. "No name, just a phone number. If Mitchell escalates, call this. There's a network of former Phantom operators working to expose the program's abuses. We're building a case, legal, public, the kind that ends careers and shutters black sites. That's treason. That's accountability. The program betrayed us first." Mara took the card, studied it. "How many of you are there?" 17 still alive, 23 dead, mostly suicide. Some..." Elena's voice hardened. "Some just disappeared, filed as training accidents or mission casualties. But we know better." 23 dead, the same number Mara had saved at Blackthorn Ridge. The equation never balanced, but it kept demanding recalculation. "What happened to your team leader?" Mara asked quietly. Elena's jaw tightened. "Similar to Marcus. Ambush, bad intel. I was overwatch, didn't see the flanking team until it was too late. He died buying time for the rest of us to extract. And when I requested psychological support afterward, you know what Phantom said? Needs time to recalibrate? Exactly. Like we're machines that just need firmware updates instead of people who watched friends die." Elena pushed off the beam. "You're not alone in this, Mara, and you're not crazy for thinking the program's rotten. It is. Has been for years. You getting out and surviving, that's revolutionary." She left as quietly as she'd arrived, leaving Mara standing there with a rifle in one hand and a phone number in the other. Evidence that the war she'd been fighting wasn't just personal, it was institutional. And somewhere out there, others were fighting it too. Mara fired twice more. Both shots center mass. Both perfect. Then she packed up the rifle and went back to the barracks, mind racing with possibilities she'd never considered. What if she wasn't broken? What if the program was? What if survival wasn't weakness but resistance? What if teaching was the most dangerous thing she could do? The second class started 3 weeks later. 20 students this time, word had spread about Mara's methods and demand exceeded capacity. She stood in front of them on day 1, looking at eager faces that had no idea what they were signing up for. "My name is Gunnery Sergeant Mara Vale," she began. "I'm going to teach you advanced marksmanship. But before we touch a rifle, You need to understand something fundamental. The door opened. Mitchell walked in, flanked by two MPs. The room went silent. Students looked confused. Mara felt her heart rate spike but kept her expression neutral. "Can I help you, Deputy Director?" she asked. "Just observing," Mitchell said smoothly, "making sure training standards are being maintained." Translation: "I'm watching you, waiting for you to slip." Mara understood the game. Phantom couldn't pull her directly, not with Vance's protection and legitimate teaching duties, so they'd hover, apply pressure, create stress until she made a mistake or broke down. She'd seen this tactic before, had watched other operators crumble under sustained institutional harassment. The program was patient, methodical. They had time, they had resources, they had the machinery of bureaucracy working for them. But Mara had something they didn't. She had students watching, witnesses, people who'd remember if she got crushed under the program's heel. And more importantly, she had a choice. She could cave, or she could teach. Mara turned back to her class. "As I was saying, before we touch rifles, you need to understand that marksmanship is a conversation between skill and conscience. The rifle answers questions. It doesn't ask them. We ask them. We decide what's worth hitting and what's worth missing, and that decision defines everything." She taught for 4 hours straight with Mitchell watching from the back. Every word measured, every example chosen for maximum impact. She didn't talk about Phantom directly, couldn't, legally, but she taught around it. Taught about institutional pressures, about programs that valued results over people, about the importance of protecting your humanity even when the job demanded you check it at the door. The students absorbed it like gospel. Mitchell's face grew darker. When class ended, he approached. "Interesting curriculum, Sergeant." "Standard marksmanship doctrine, sir, with heavy emphasis on psychological preparation. Best way to keep soldiers alive and functional, or best way to undermine legitimate programs by planting doubt." Mara met his eyes. If doubt is what protects soldiers from exploitation, then doubt is tactical wisdom. Mitchell stepped closer, voice dropping. "You're playing a dangerous game. I'm teaching a class. You're building a following, students who trust you, who'll listen when you inevitably start talking about Phantom's failures." "I signed NDAs. I'm honoring them. For now, but how long before you slip? Before some student asks the right question and you can't help yourself?" Mitchell's smile was cold. "We're patient, Sergeant, and we're very good at waiting for people to self-destruct." He left with his MPs. The classroom felt lighter immediately. Mara sat down, hands shaking slightly, and forced her breathing steady. One of the students, a young corporal named Davies, approached cautiously. "Gunny, you okay?" "Fine." That guy seemed... Davies searched for words. "Intense. He's just doing his job." "Which is what, exactly?" Mara looked at Davies, at the genuine concern on his face, at the trust she'd built in 4 hours of honest teaching, and made a choice. "Protecting systems that don't always protect people," she said carefully. "Which is why it's important you learn to think for yourselves, to question orders when they don't make sense, to protect each other when institutions won't." Davies nodded slowly. "That's not in the manual." "The best lessons never are." Though over the following weeks, the pattern continued. Mitchell or his people showed up randomly, observing, taking notes, creating a paper trail of concerning behavior that could be weaponized later. Mara taught through it, adapted her curriculum to work around the surveillance, found ways to communicate truth without violating classification. Her students thrived. They learned marksmanship, yes, but they also learned critical thinking, learned to recognize manipulation, learned that following orders and following conscience weren't always the same thing, and word spread. Other instructors started adopting her methods. Soldiers requested transfer to her classes. Officers began citing her teaching in performance reviews. Mara was becoming something she'd never intended, a symbol, proof that you could survive the machine without becoming part of it. Phantom didn't like symbols. 6 weeks into the second class, Vance called Mara to her office. The colonel looked tired, older, like she'd been fighting battles that didn't show. "Sit," Vance said. Mara sat. Mitchell filed a formal complaint with the Inspector General. claims you're conducting unauthorized psychological operations against military personnel, says your teaching methods constitute indoctrination against classified programs. Mara's stomach dropped. Ma'am, I've seen the allegations. They're bullshit, but they're official bullshit, which means we have to respond officially. Vance slid a document across the desk. You're being investigated. Pending review, you're suspended from teaching duties. For how long? Indefinite, could be weeks, could be months. Depends on how much bureaucratic weight Mitchell can throw around. Mara felt the walls closing in. This was it. The systematic destruction Elena had warned about. They couldn't win directly, so they'd use process. Bury her in investigations and suspensions until she either quit or broke. What are my options? She asked. Limited. You can fight the investigation, but that takes time and lawyers. You can accept a transfer. I've got requests from 3 other bases that would take you. Or, Vance paused, or you can do what Mitchell expects. Crumble. Give up. Disappear back into logistics. That's not happening. Good. Because I'm not done fighting for you. Vance leaned forward. Here's what I didn't tell Mitchell. While he was building his case, I was building mine. I've got testimonials from 47 students about how your teaching improved their performance. I've got officer evaluations praising your methods. I've got data showing decreased psychological casualties among soldiers trained in your program. Will that be enough? Against the IG investigation? Maybe. Against Phantom? Vance's expression hardened. No, they're too entrenched, too protected. The only way to beat them is to expose them. Make them toxic enough that protecting the program costs more than shuttering it. Mara pulled out Elena's card, set it on the desk. There might be a way. Vance looked at the number. What is this? Network of former Phantom operators. They're building a case, legal and public. If I join them, if I testify about the program's abuses, it could provide cover, make Mitchell back off. It could also make you a target. Whistleblowers don't tend to live long, happy lives. Neither do people who stay silent while institutions destroy them. Vance studied her, long and hard. Then she picked up the card. Make the call, but understand what you're choosing. This path doesn't lead to quiet retirement. It leads to congressional hearings and media scrutiny and making enemies in very dark places. I know. Why risk it? Mara thought about Marcus, about the 23 dead operators Elena had mentioned, about her students who deserved better than a system that chewed up talent and spit out trauma. Because someone has to, she said simply. And I'm already destroyed. Might as well make it count for something. Vance nodded slowly. Then make it count, Gunnery Sergeant. Make it count for everyone they broke before you. Mara took the card back, felt its weight, felt the future compressing into a single phone call that would either save her or finish what the program started. She made the call that night. Elena answered on the first ring. I'm in, Mara said. Tell me what you need. Everything. Every mission, every abuse, every operator who didn't make it. Elena's voice carried grim satisfaction. Welcome to the war that matters, Mara. Let's burn this program to the ground. And for the first time in 3 years, Mara felt something that wasn't guilt or numbness or rage. She felt purpose, clean and clear and absolutely certain. The rifle had taught her to kill. Now it was time to teach the world what killing cost, and make sure the people demanding payment finally paid their share. The call ended. Mara sat in the darkness of her quarters, phone still warm in her hand, and felt the weight of what she'd just committed to settling over her shoulders like armor. Not the crushing kind, the protective kind, the kind that said this matters, so bear it well. Elena had given her instructions. Simple, direct, brutal in their honesty. Write everything down, dates, missions, names of operators who didn't make it, every protocol violation, every time Phantom prioritized the mission over the person, every suicide they called a training accident, every breakdown they labeled recalibration. Make it detailed, make it irrefutable, make it hurt. Mara had agreed, hung up, and now sat staring at a blank document on her laptop, cursor blinking like a heartbeat, waiting for her to start bleeding truth onto the screen. She started with Marcus. Marcus Hale, team leader, Task Force Phantom, KIA during extraction operation in hostile territory. Death attributed to enemy action. Reality, Operator hesitation due to inadequate psychological support and unclear rules of engagement. Phantom response. Reassign surviving team member to administrative duties. No debrief, no trauma counseling, no accountability. The words came slowly at first, then faster. Memories she'd buried under logistics paperwork and silence rising to the surface like bodies from deep water. Mission after mission, operator after operator, the pattern revealing itself in brutal clarity. Phantom didn't train soldiers, it built weapons. And when weapons malfunctioned, the program discarded them and built new ones. No maintenance, no repair, just replacement. Mara wrote for 6 hours straight. When she finally stopped, dawn was bleeding through the windows and she'd produced 47 pages of testimony that would either destroy Task Force Phantom or destroy her. Possibly both. She encrypted the file, sent it to Elena's secure server, and sat back, feeling hollowed out. Empty. Like she'd just performed surgery on herself without anesthesia and survived through pure spite. Her phone buzzed. Text from Elena. Received. This is exactly what we needed. Stand by. Stand by. Military speak for hurry up and wait. For existing in limbo while other people made decisions about your fate. Mara had lived in that space for 3 years. She could survive it a little longer. What she couldn't survive was the silence. She needed to move, to teach, to do something that mattered while bureaucracy ground through its gears. But Vance had suspended her pending investigation. She was grounded, benched, sidelined while Mitchell built his case and Elena built hers, and Mara just existed. She made it until noon before the walls started closing in. Then she went to the range. The facility was busy. Weekend qualification runs, soldiers maintaining proficiency, the constant rhythm of controlled violence that kept military bases functional. Mara found an empty lane, checked out a rifle, and started working through drills. Not fancy, just fundamentals. Breath control, trigger discipline, sight alignment. The rifle spoke its familiar language. She answered. The conversation was old and comfortable, and the only thing that made sense when everything else was chaos. Heard you got suspended. Mara looked up. Davies stood there, her student from the 2nd class, carrying his own rifle and looking uncertain. News travels fast, Mara said. Is it true? About the investigation? Yes. That's bullshit. You're the best instructor on base. Doesn't matter. Politics trumps competence. Davies sat up in the lane beside her, loaded his rifle with the careful precision she'd taught him. So what happens now? I wait. They investigate. Either I'm cleared or I'm not. And if you're not? Mara fired 3 shots, tight grouping, center mass. Then I find another way to fight. They shot in silence for a while, just the rhythm of rifles and brass casings and paper targets dying at distance. It should have been relaxing. Instead, Mara felt watched, studied, like invisible eyes were cataloging every movement for future use. She was right. When she returned the rifle and signed out, an MP was waiting, young, nervous, carrying a folder that might as well have been a death warrant. Gunnery Sergeant Vale, you're ordered to report to the Inspector General's office immediately. When? Now, Gunny. Mara's stomach dropped. The investigation was moving faster than expected. That meant either evidence was overwhelmingly in her favor or overwhelmingly against her. Given Mitchell's resources and Phantom's institutional protection, she could guess which. Davies stepped forward. I'll go with her. Witnesses aren't permitted. I'm not a witness. I'm a student, making sure my instructor gets fair treatment. The MP looked uncertain. Mara shook her head. Stand down, Davies. This isn't your fight. With respect, Gunny, yes it is. You taught us to protect each other when institutions won't. Well, institutions are failing you right now, so I'm protecting you. Other soldiers had gathered, watching, listening. Mara saw her other students among them, nearly 30 soldiers trained in her methods, all wearing the same expression of quiet defiance. The MP keyed his radio. Sir? We have a situation. What kind of situation? Students are insisting on accompanying Sergeant Vale to the IG office. Static. Then a new voice. Mitchell. Tell them to disperse. This is official business. Davies raised his voice. We're not dispersing until we know she's being treated fairly. That's insubordination. That's witnessing. We have a right to observe official proceedings that affect our training cadre. Mitchell appeared in person 10 minutes later, flanked by MPs and carrying the expression of someone who'd just watched their carefully constructed plan hit unexpected resistance. He looked at the assembled soldiers, at Mara, at the situation spiraling beyond his control. "This is highly irregular," he said. "So is investigating an instructor without cause," Davies countered. "There's significant cause, then show it, publicly. Let us see what she's being accused of." Mitchell's jaw tightened. This was the problem with building symbols. They inspired loyalty, and loyalty, once activated, was harder to dismantle than regulations. "Sergeant Vale will report alone. That's not negotiable." Mara stepped forward before the situation escalated further. "It's fine, I'll go." "Gunny," Davies started. "I said it's fine, stand down, all of you." She looked at her students, at the loyalty they were offering, at the risk they were taking just by being here. "You've done enough, more than enough. Let me handle this." They didn't look convinced, but they stepped back, creating space. Mara followed the MP and Mitchell toward the command building, feeling dozens of eyes on her back, watching, remembering, bearing witness. Phantom had taught her to work alone, to be invisible, to disappear into the mission. Her students had taught her that visibility could be armor, that witnesses mattered, that sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was refuse to be erased. Thoughts. The Inspector General's office was sterile, fluorescent lights, metal furniture, the kind of space designed to strip away personality and reduce people to data points on official forms. A woman sat behind the desk, Lieutenant Colonel Andrea Kim, IG for the district. She had the expression of someone who'd seen every kind of misconduct and stopped being surprised by any of it. "Gunnery Sergeant Vale, sit." Mara sat. Mitchell positioned himself by the door, guard or witness, depending on interpretation. Kim opened a folder. "You're being investigated for conducting unauthorized psychological operations, undermining classified programs, and violating operational security protocols. Do you understand the charges?" "Yes, ma'am." "How do you plead?" "Not guilty." Kim made a note. "Deputy Director Mitchell has provided extensive documentation suggesting otherwise. Recordings of your classes, student testimonials, analysis of your curriculum showing systematic efforts to plant doubt about military programs and protocols. I taught critical thinking and psychological resilience. By questioning authority and encouraging soldiers to prioritize personal conscience over orders. By teaching them to think instead of just follow. That's not your mandate. Your mandate is marksmanship instruction." Mara leaned forward. "With respect, ma'am, marksmanship without context is just target practice. These soldiers needed to understand the weight of what they were learning, the responsibility, the consequences." "According to whose doctrine?" "According to experience. According to what happens when programs train people to kill without teaching them how to live with it afterward." Mitchell cut in. "She's referring to Task Force Phantom, attempting to undermine a classified program by—" "I'm referring to basic human psychology," Mara interrupted. "Soldiers who understand what they're doing are more stable, more effective, and less likely to break under pressure. That's not undermining programs, that's protecting assets." Kim studied her. "You have strong opinions about program methodology. I have experience with program failure. Classified experience you're contractually prohibited from discussing." "I haven't discussed specifics. I've taught principles. Principles that happen to align perfectly with criticism of Phantom's operational model." Mara felt the trap closing. Anything she said would be twisted. Any defense would become evidence of violation. Mitchell had built the case carefully. No smoking gun, just circumstantial patterns suggesting guilt. Then Kim said something unexpected. "Deputy Director Mitchell, please step outside." Mitchell stiffened. "This is a matter of national security. This is my investigation, and I'm conducting it my way. Step outside." He left, radiating barely controlled fury. The door closed. Kim waited 30 seconds, then spoke quietly. "Task Force Phantom has a reputation. Even among those of us who don't know the details, we know the pattern. high operator turnover, psychological casualties, questionable oversight. I've investigated 3 cases involving phantom personnel in the last 5 years. All 3 ended with the operator dead or disappeared before I could complete my work. Mara's blood went cold. Are you saying, I'm saying Mitchell is protecting something that needs protecting because exposure would be catastrophic. And you, Kim gestured at the folder, you're threatening that protection just by existing and thriving. So what happens to me? Officially, I find insufficient evidence to support the charges. Your teaching methods are unconventional but not illegal. Your curriculum focuses on psychological preparation, which is within scope for advanced training. Case dismissed. Relief flooded through Mara, then suspicion. Why? Because I'm tired of watching good soldiers get destroyed by bad programs. And because Kim pulled out a second folder, thinner. I received this 2 hours ago. Testimony from 17 former Phantom operators detailing systemic abuse, inadequate psychological support, and institutional cover-ups of operator casualties. It's compelling, it's detailed, and it's going to congressional oversight committees next week. Elena's network, moving faster than expected. Mitchell doesn't know yet, Kim continued. When he finds out, he's going to try damage control, which means silencing anyone who could corroborate the testimony, which means you're at risk. I can handle myself. Can you handle a program with unlimited resources and no accountability, deciding you're too dangerous to leave operational? Kim leaned forward. Here's my advice, Sergeant. When I clear you today, don't celebrate. Get protective custody. Get lawyers. Get media attention. Make yourself too visible to disappear quietly. That'll destroy my career. Better than Mitchell destroying your life. Mara processed this. Saw the choice clearly. Safe silence or dangerous truth. Invisible survival or visible resistance. She'd already chosen, in that hospital bed, in that classroom, on that phone call with Elena. Thank you, ma'am, for the warning and the clearance. Don't thank me. Just survive, and if possible, take Phantom down with you. Some programs deserve to die. The clearance was official by 1800 hours. Kim's report was damning toward Mitchell, noting his inappropriate pressure, lack of evidence, and apparent personal vendetta. It didn't mention Phantom specifically, but the implications were clear. Mara was reinstated immediately. Vance called her to celebrate. You beat them, the colonel said, pouring whiskey. Mitchell's going to have to back off now. Or escalate. You think he will? I think Phantom doesn't lose gracefully. Vance nodded slowly. Then we prepare. Increase security. Media liaison on standby, legal counsel. We make you untouchable. And my students? Protected. Anyone comes after them, they go through me first. Mara accepted the whiskey. Drank. Felt the burn settle into clarity. There's something else, congressional testimony, about Phantom's abuses. It's happening next week. Vance went very still. You're involved? I provided evidence, along with 16 other former operators. Jesus Christ, Vale. That's... Vance searched for words. That's scorched earth. You're not just fighting Mitchell, you're fighting the entire intelligence apparatus that protects Phantom. I know. They'll destroy you. They'll try, but I'm not alone anymore, and that makes all the difference. The colonel studied her, then raised her glass. To fighting battles that matter, even when the odds are shit. They drank. Outside, the base settled into evening routine. Inside, Mara felt the future compressing into a single week that would either free her or finish what the program started. Either way, she was done running. The congressional hearing was scheduled for Thursday. Elena's network had spent months building the case, coordinating testimony, assembling evidence that couldn't be dismissed or buried. 17 operators, all willing to speak publicly about Phantom's failures. Mitchell made his move on Tuesday. Mara was walking back from evening class when 2 vehicles boxed her in. Black SUVs, tinted windows, the kind of anonymous government transportation that said classified without needing plates. Doors opened, men emerged. Not MPs, not soldiers. Something else. Contractors. The kind Phantom used for work that needed plausible deniability. Sergeant Vale, come with us. On whose authority? Classified. Don't make this difficult. Mara's hand moved toward her sidearm. One of the contractors shook his head. We're not here to hurt you, just to talk. Somewhere private. I'm not going anywhere without... A third vehicle arrived. This one, she recognized. Vance's staff car. Vance's staff. The colonel emerged, flanked by 2 MPs and carrying her sidearm openly. Gentlemen, Vance said calmly, you're on my base. Approaching my personnel, without authorization or notification. That's a problem. The lead contractor didn't flinch. This is a matter of national security. Then go through proper channels, file the paperwork, request the meeting. Do it legally. Vance positioned herself between Mara and the contractors. Or try it illegally and discover how well armed this base is. Stand off. The contractors exchanged glances, calculating odds. Finally, the leader nodded. We'll be in touch, Sergeant Vale, soon. They left. The vehicles disappeared. Vance waited until they were gone before holstering her weapon. That was Mitchell's play, she said. Intimidation. Maybe kidnapping if you'd gone with them. I wasn't planning to. Good, because from now on, you don't go anywhere alone. I'm assigning you protective detail until after the congressional hearing. That's excessive. That's necessary. Mitchell's desperate. Desperate people make dangerous decisions. Vance's expression hardened. You're stirring up a hornet's nest, Vale, the kind that stings back. Are you sure you want to keep pushing? Mara thought about Marcus, about 23 dead operators, about her students who deserved better than a system that broke people and called it training. I'm sure. Then let's make sure you survive to testify. The protective detail started immediately. 2 MPS, rotating shifts, staying within sight at all times. It felt like prison, like being watched constantly. But it was also insurance, evidence that Phantom couldn't touch her without consequences. The next 2 days crawled past. Mara taught classes under guard, ate meals with escorts, slept with MPS posted outside her door. The students noticed but didn't ask. They just adapted, creating buffer zones, watching for threats, turning her classes into fortified spaces through sheer presence. On Thursday morning, Mara flew to the Capitol. The congressional hearing room was intimidating. High ceilings, dark wood, rows of seats for spectators and media. 17 former Phantom operators sat in a line, facing a panel of senators who looked both curious and uncomfortable. Mara was third to testify. Elena went first. Cool, precise, devastating. She outlined Phantom's history, its mission parameters, and the systematic failures that turned operators into casualties. Her testimony was clinical, dates, names, incidents, all backed by documentation that had been submitted to the committee beforehand. The second operator, a man named Torres, provided personal narrative, his team leader's suicide, the program's refusal to provide adequate mental health support, the administrative burial of obvious warning signs. Then it was Mara's turn. She approached the witness table, raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth, sat down facing senators and cameras and the weight of everything she'd survived. Senator Harrison, committee chair, spoke first. Gunnery Sergeant Vale, thank you for your testimony today. I understand you were part of Task Force Phantom for approximately 4 years before requesting discharge. Yes, sir. Can you describe what led to that discharge request? Mara took a breath. My team leader, Marcus Hale, was killed during an extraction operation. I was overwatch. I had a shot that could have prevented his death. I hesitated. By the time I fired, it was too late. Why did you hesitate? Because I was uncertain about rules of engagement, uncertain about target confirmation, uncertain about protocol. And that uncertainty, that half second of thinking instead of acting, cost him his life. Did you receive psychological support after this incident? No, sir. I requested it 17 times. Each request was denied or ignored. I was reassigned to administrative duties with a note saying I needed time to recalibrate. Recalibrate? Phantom's term for operators who were psychologically damaged but not damaged enough to discharge. We were supposed to reset ourselves, return to operational status, pretend the trauma didn't exist. Did you recalibrate? Mara's hands tightened on the table. No, sir. I buried myself in logistics and tried to forget I'd ever been a weapon. It didn't work. Senator Harrison made notes. Another senator, Morrison, leaned forward. You recently participated in combat operations at Blackthorn Ridge. Used skills acquired during Phantom training to save Allied personnel, correct? Yes, ma'am. Did that experience change your perspective on the program? It clarified it. I realized Phantom hadn't trained me to be effective. It had trained me to be numb, to shoot without thinking, to kill without feeling. And when I couldn't do that anymore, the program had no use for me. Mara's voice stayed level. Effective operators need psychological support, need context, need permission to be human. Phantom provided none of that. It just built weapons and discarded the ones that showed cracks. Strong language, Sergeant. Accurate language, ma'am. I've read the casualty reports. 23 operators dead by suicide or training accidents in the last 5 years. That's not normal attrition. That's institutional failure. Morrison nodded slowly. What would you recommend? Shut it down, completely. Transfer operators to programs with proper oversight. Provide psychological support to everyone who served. Hold leadership accountable for the deaths they could have prevented. Another senator, Caldwell, known defense hawk, cut in sharply. You're advocating for dismantling a critical intelligence asset based on personal grievance. I'm advocating for protecting personnel based on observable patterns of institutional abuse. Task Force Phantom has successfully completed hundreds of missions. At what cost? Mara interrupted. How many operators broke? How many quit? How many are dead? Success measured only in mission completion is success measured wrong. Caldwell's face reddened. That's inappropriate. What's inappropriate is treating human beings like ammunition, using us up and throwing us away when we malfunction. Mara's voice cut like steel. I survived Phantom. Barely. Most don't. And every operator who dies by their own hand because the program failed them is a failure we could prevent by demanding better. The room went silent. Cameras recorded. Media took notes. Mara sat there, armor cracked, truth bleeding out, and felt the weight of 3 years' silence finally lifting. Harrison spoke carefully. Thank you for your testimony, Sergeant Vale. Your courage in coming forward is noted. It's not courage, sir. It's accounting. 23 dead operators deserve someone to speak for them. I'm just the one who survived long enough to do it. She was dismissed, walked back to her seat among the other operators. Elena squeezed her hand. Torres nodded. Around them, survivors who'd chosen dangerous visibility over safe silence. The hearing continued for 6 more hours, each operator adding pieces to the mosaic of institutional failure. By the end, even Caldwell looked shaken. Harrison closed with a promise. This committee will review all testimony and documentation. We will make recommendations regarding Task Force Phantom's future operations, and we will ensure that personnel receive the support they deserve. It was political speak, non-committal, but it was also acknowledgement. Phantom had been dragged into the light, and programs that operated in darkness rarely survived prolonged exposure. Botti. Mitchell tried one last play. As Mara left the Capitol building, he appeared from a waiting car. Alone this time. No contractors, no threats, just a tired man who looked like he'd lost something important. That was a mistake, he said. That was necessary. You've destroyed years of operational infrastructure. I've exposed years of operational abuse. There's a difference. Mitchell stepped closer. You think this changes anything? Programs like Phantom exist because they're needed. Shut this one down, another takes its place. Different name, same mission, same pressures. Maybe, but this time operators will know they have options, know they can speak up, know they're not disposable. Mara met his eyes. You can't bury that knowledge, can't classify it away. It's out there now, permanent. You've made powerful enemies. I've made powerful allies too, and I'm not afraid anymore of you, of Phantom, of the consequences. You should be. Probably. But fear's just another tool, and I'm done letting others use it against me. Mitchell looked at her for a long moment. Then he got back in his car and drove away, leaving Mara standing on the Capitol steps, finally free of the shadow that had followed her since Marcus died.
She didn't feel victorious, didn't feel redeemed, just lighter. Like she'd set down weight she'd been carrying so long, she'd forgotten what walking felt like without it. Elena appeared beside her. "You did good in there." "We all did." "What happens now?" Mara considered. "Now we go back to our lives. Teach, heal, build something better than what broke us." "Think they'll actually shut Phantom down?" "Eventually, maybe not immediately, but the clock's ticking. And every day it exists, more people know what it costs. That knowledge is corrosive. Programs can't survive it." They walked together down the Capitol steps, 17 operators who'd chosen truth over safety, visibility over invisibility, resistance over resignation. Behind them, senators debated. Media reported. The machinery of accountability ground slowly forward. And somewhere in a classified facility, Task Force Phantom began the long process of dying. 6 months later, Mara stood in front of her 5th class. 60 students this time. Demand had exploded after the congressional hearing. Her story had spread. The quiet supply clerk who became a legend. The broken operator who testified against the program that broke her. She was famous now, unavoidably visible, exactly what she'd never wanted to be. But visibility came with unexpected benefits. Funding for expanded training programs. Psychological support integrated into curriculum. Oversight committees ensuring instructors weren't being exploited or pressured. The system wasn't fixed, but it was bending, and Mara was part of the pressure making it bend. "My name is Gunnery Sergeant Mara Vale," she told her new students. "I'm going to teach you advanced marksmanship. But first, I'm going to teach you that skill means nothing without conscience. That following orders and following your moral compass aren't always the same thing. That institutions will ask you to be weapons, but your job is to stay human despite that pressure." Hands raised, questions, challenges. She answered each one honestly, without hedging, without classification excuses. This was teaching, real teaching, building people up instead of breaking them down. After class, Vance appeared. "Heard you got another commendation, 5th this year." "Students did the work. I just guided them." "That's leadership, Vale, whether you want to admit it or not." Mara smiled slightly. "Still getting used to it." "Good. Because there's something else." Vance handed her a folder. "Recommendation for promotion, Captain, with assignment to develop comprehensive psychological resilience programs for special operations personnel." Mara stared at the folder. "That's huge. Yes. And exactly what we need. Someone who understands both the operational requirements and the human cost. Someone operators will trust because you've walked the path and survived it." What happened to Phantom? Officially? Under review. Unofficially? Being dismantled. Operators transferred. Leadership reassigned. Mitchell took early retirement. Vance's expression was grim satisfaction. "Your testimony started an avalanche. The program's buried under it. And the operators, the ones who didn't make it, being recognized. Properly. Families getting truth instead of lies. It's not enough. But it's something." Mara closed the folder, felt the weight of new responsibility settling over old scars. "I'll need time to think about the promotion." "Take it. But Vale," Vance's voice softened, "you've spent 3 years punishing yourself for surviving. Maybe it's time to accept you earned that survival, and use it for something that builds instead of destroys." After Vance left, Mara walked to the observation point overlooking the training ranges. Sunset painted the mountains gold and crimson. Below, soldiers practiced fundamentals. Learning, growing, becoming. She thought about Marcus, about what he'd want. Not revenge, not self-destruction, just continuation. Taking what he'd taught and passing it forward. Turning tragedy into teaching, pain into purpose. Her phone buzzed. Message from Davies. "Gunny, just graduated top of my class. Thanks for everything. You changed my life." Mara smiled. Typed back. "You did the work. I just pointed the direction." More messages came. From other students. From operators she'd testified beside. From soldiers she'd never met who'd heard her story and found courage in it. She'd become something she never intended. A symbol. An example. Proof that you could break and still rebuild. Could fail and still matter.
could survive the machine without becoming part of it. The rifle sat in its case at her feet. She'd brought it here without thinking. Old habit, old comfort. But looking at it now, Mara realized something fundamental had changed. The weapon no longer defined her. It was just a tool. Important. Necessary sometimes. But not her identity. Not her purpose. Not the only language she spoke. She'd learned others. Teaching, testimony, truth. Languages that built instead of destroyed. That created instead of ending. Some people changed battles with one shot. Mara had learned to change lives with one lesson, one testimony, one refusal to be silent when silence was expected. The equation still didn't balance. 23 dead operators. Marcus gone forever. Scars that would never fully heal. But the math was different now. For every life lost, she'd helped build systems to protect future ones. For every operator broken by Phantom, she'd created pathways for others to survive. It wasn't redemption, wasn't forgiveness, just forward motion. Just the slow, difficult work of turning survival into something that mattered. Mara picked up the rifle case, walked back toward the barracks. Tomorrow would bring new students, new challenges, new opportunities to teach soldiers that skill without conscience was just efficiency in service of nothing. Behind her, the sun set on Blackthorn Ridge, and all the battles fought there. Ahead, the future waited, uncertain, difficult, dangerous, but hers to build. And for the first time in 3 years, that felt like enough. But 3 years later, Captain Mara Vale stood in front of Congressional Committee again. Not as a witness this time, as an expert, testifying about psychological resilience programs that had reduced special operations casualties by 43%. Programs she'd designed, tested, proven. The senators listened, took notes, approved expanded funding. After the hearing, a young soldier approached her. Fresh face, nervous energy. Captain Vale? I just wanted to thank you. Your testimony 3 years ago, it saved my life. I was Phantom, breaking, planning to... She paused. Your words gave me permission to ask for help instead. Mara felt something crack open in her chest. Not pain this time. Something else. Something that felt like purpose meeting proof. What's your name? She asked. Lieutenant Sarah Chen. I teach marksmanship now. Use your methods. Tell my students what you taught me, that being human isn't weakness. It's the only thing keeping us strong. They talked for an hour, about teaching, about survival, about the long road from broken to building. When Chen left, Mara stood alone in the empty hallway, feeling the weight of years finally settling into something manageable. She thought about Marcus one last time, wondered what he'd say if he could see her now. Probably something simple. Something true. You did good, Mara. You did real good. She walked out of the Capitol into sunlight, carrying the rifle case that had once been her entire identity and was now just one tool among many. The war wasn't over, never would be, but she'd stopped fighting herself and started fighting systems that broke people, and that made all the difference. Some people change battles with one shot. The rare ones change themselves and the world, by choosing why they fight, who they protect, and what they build from the ruins. Your scars don't define you. How you carry them forward does.